all right, getting started with ZeoCharge, you have the product, great. Now what do you do with it, right? So number one is going to be identifying kind of what starting dose that you think is going to work best for you, right? So number one is to, if you're not familiar with kind of the dosing paradox and, dosing with ZeoCharge, then it might be a good idea to look at some of those resources on the website, because microdosing is not recommended because taking too low of a dose can be a more inefficient detox and result in unnecessary detox reactions. So that's number one thing. Low doses kind of go in, stir stuff up, make a mess in the body. The body has to clean it up. It can be stressful. The higher dose can go in, stir stuff up, make a mess, but it has enough binding capacity to kind of clean up its own mess, and then it can actually reduce stress on the body, right? So the higher doses are generally gentler because they're a more effective and efficient detox. So there's the super short version for you. So what's the starting point? Well, there, on the jar it says, 1 scoop, which is 5 grams, and that's really a maintenance dose. So if you're feeling pretty good, you're healthy, you've been doing a lot of detox, and you feel like you're just using this to kind of grab some of those daily dose toxicity, keep up to the challenge of, this toxic world, then that might be a good dose for you. If you're more in recovery mode, more in detox mode, more in, okay, it's time to reduce some of this toxic burden from my body, opposed to just maintaining, then potentially starting with higher doses, like between 2 and 6 scoops is going to be ideal. And the healthier you are, the less you need. And the more toxicity you're exposed to on a daily basis, the more you need, right? So that's really the key. So like the sources of toxicity is going to be big, because it's the external sources and the internal sources of toxicity. And you want to have enough ZeoCharge to bind to all the stuff that's going on, just to remove as much stress on the body as possible. So external sources, food, water, air, all the stuff going on, moldy environment, all this stuff. And then one of the biggest sources of toxicity is the internal production of toxins. So metabolic waste products like ammonia, urea, if you have, histamine issues, maybe you're having an overabundance of histamine being produced, the ZeoCharge binds to those things. And then also if like, for example, the healthier you are, the less you need. So if your liver is not working optimally, if your kidneys aren't working optimally, your body's not clearing some of these waste products as efficiently as it could, taking additional ZeoCharge could be helpful to go and bind those things that the body is not dealing with as efficiently as it could be. And then if you have microbial imbalance, let's say you have maybe excess yeast, fungus, you have excess parasites, you have microbial overgrowth of some sort, bacterial, whatever it may be, those are basically little toxin factories. So those things are releasing waste products that are, putting stress on your body as well. And then it's just the more toxicity present, the more you need, right? And that could also fluctuate based on, time of life and, environment. If even emotional stress, mental stress, any sort of stress, that's all taking away from your body's energy, your total processing power, your body's detox energy. So in certain situations, you might want to increase your dose temporarily based on kind of what's going on. But starting off, so 1 scoop, really maintenance, 5 grams, great. And then if you're really more in recovery mode and detox mode, trying to remove some of the deeply stored stuff, you're going to want to probably consider like 2 to 6 scoops. It just depends. Everyone needs different amounts. So the general rule would be, let's say you start with 2 scoops and you get a headache or some sort of negative detox reaction. That's when you might want to double the dose to 4 scoops, because maybe the 2 scoops wasn't enough. Once again, going back and referencing some of the dosing paradox and dosing guide information will be helpful there. So after dosing, it's like, okay, now when do we take it? What are the best practices? So the nice thing about ZeoCharge is it can be taken at any time. It can be taken morning, afternoon, evening, anytime with food or on an empty stomach. So it's a very versatile binder. So the thing to consider is whenever you take it, it's going to be binding to whatever your body's processing at that time. So if you take it after a meal, there's going to be different things present than if you took it on an empty stomach. If you take it after a meal, there's going to be more metabolic waste products from digestion. There's potentially going to be some toxic elements from the actual food it's going to be binding to. There might be some, toxic elements released from the liver through bile dumping after a meal, right? So it just depends on what you're using it for. So there's there's benefits of taking it after a meal. There's benefits of taking it on an empty stomach. I will say it has there's a greater chance of experiencing a detox reaction if you take it first thing in the morning on an empty stomach. So if you're concerned with detox reactions, probably better to take it after a meal in the evening or after a meal at lunch, starting off at least, to reduce the possibility. So it kind of depends. it tends to work well for, at any time. It's just what works best with your schedule. A lot of people will, like, for example, with the meal, if you take it 30 to 60 minutes after a meal, some people are doing that because they're really trying to clean out their liver, and the liver's producing bile in response to the meal. And then the bile is toxic. It has this toxic element. So it's basically going in, they're trying to bind to some of this toxicity in the small intestine before it reabsorbs, right? So that's one approach. I think one of the good strategies is whenever you're most symptomatic, take it then. Because when you're most symptomatic, you probably have the highest level of process toxicity at that current time. And going in and helping bind that, reducing the body's burden on it could be helpful. But whatever works best for you in terms of timing. And then it can be mixed with, generally people just mix it with water. That's a great approach. Pour yourself a glass of water, and then put a cup, whatever you're going to put, 2 scoops, whatever. Scoop those into the water. I like to let it just kind of start dissolving, kind of start sinking to the bottom, and then I stir it up. That's what I do. I mean, there's probably, however you want to do it, just mix it with water. It's great. It can also be mixed with smoothies. It can be mixed with, it's not heat sensitive, which is interesting. So you can actually bake it. So you could bake it into baked goods. I don't have any recipes or anything, but it can be baked. Some people mix it with, hot bone broth. Some people even mix it with coffee, hot tea. I haven't experimented with any of that, but it's not heat sensitive. So you have liberty to kind of experiment and get it down in any way that works best with you. So, and just a note on taking it with food, because a lot of other binders you're not supposed to take with food because it could deplete some of the nutrients in the food, interfere with the absorption of those nutrients, etc. So Zeolite was used for animals before it was ever used for humans, and it was always mixed with the animal feed. And when they were doing research, it was improving the blood levels of nutrients in the animals even when mixed with food, right? So that's kind of, it's kind of interesting with ZeoCharge, and that's one of the reasons ZeoCharge is so unique, because it works by that swap mechanism, and it's a selective or a smart binder. But so that's one of the nice things. Some people prefer taking it away from food. They feel maybe it works a little bit better. Some people like taking it with a meal. It kind of depends on preference with that. But yeah, those are the main things: getting the dose right, taking it whenever you want, and going from there. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out, and happy detoxing.